A pleasant good day to everyone. This is Myla L. Niro of Bicol University College of Agriculture and Forestry, Ginobatan, Albay. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be part of this international conference. It's an honor for me to be here to share my research results entitled Climate and Land Use Sensitive Natural Hazard Simulation Modeling for Mount Masaraga Watershed Forest Reserve in Albay, Philippines. First, let me give you the background of my study. Mountainous areas like Mount Masaraga in Albay are prone to landslide and flood hazards. Looking at these hazards that occur simultaneously in a particular area, combining the relationship and interaction between hazards poses a big challenge to the management. The changing climatic conditions, significant change in temperature and rainfall, and the rapid conversion of land cover attributed to land use decision contribute to the occurrence of natural hazards. In recent years, many disasters were found to be more devastating effects, partly also to unpreparedness and unforeseen magnitudes. In order to effectively adapt to the changes in the climate condition and the consequential effect, there is a need to account for the magnitude and extent of hazard. It is important to create a forecast of the natural hazard occurrences. Mapping the hazard extent is imperative as this is an important aid in the decision-making process. The study generally aimed to simulate multi-temporal and scenario-based natural hazards incorporating the important drivers such as rapid land cover and climate change. Specifically, the objectives of the study: first, assess the dynamics of land use change in the area. Second, formulate models of the dynamics of landslide and flooding events. Third, simulate the models for landslide and flooding. And fourth, generate multi-hazard maps to determine the areas within the watershed prone to natural hazards. And fifth, recommend strategies to mitigate the impacts of geophysical and climate-induced hazards. This figure shows the location of Mount Masaraga Watershed Forest Reserve in Albay. For the conceptual framework of the study, the major focus of this study is on the dynamics of land use, land cover, flooding and landslide hazard simulation modeling, and integrated hazards that reflect current condition and forecast probabilistic scenario in different time periods and multi-scenario. For the methodology of the study, in the land use dynamics assessment, the final output is land use maps. And for the hazard model formulation, one of the best methods in modeling and simulating natural hazards is the analytic hierarchical process, a multi-criteria decision-making in a GIS environment where different factors can be imputed simultaneously in order to produce the final guiding risk map. In here, the factors are elevation, rainfall, slope, soil class, proximity to river, land use, and aspect. The final output is landslide inception models or formula and the flood inception models formula. And for model simulation, the final output is simulated landslide and simulated flooding. And for multiple hazard overlay, the final output is integrated hazard maps. Finally, strategy recommendation. For the results and discussion in the assessment of the dynamics of land use land cover change, agricultural areas dominate the Mount Masaraga Watershed Forest Reserve, accounting for approximately 64% of the total area, with perennial crops contributing 43%, while annual crops 21% in the year 2010. This continues to year 2020, 2050, and 2070. Meanwhile, forests consist of closed forest accounting for 19.97% and open forest of 12.55% of the total in year 2010. Open forest increased in an area up to 15.16%, while closed forest declined slightly to 19.64% in the year 2020. And 14.81% of the total area is predicted to become an open forest by the year 2050 and 2070. Formula for modeling. The landslide susceptibility map was classified into 4 susceptibility areas: low, moderate, high, and very high. In order to produce a landslide susceptibility map, the landslide susceptibility index was calculated by the following formula. Landslide susceptibility index is equals to 13.2% of slope plus 5.9% of aspect plus 16.6% of soil class plus 6.9% of elevation plus 26.2% of land use land cover plus 24.8% of rainfall plus 6.4% of proximity to river. Formula for flood model. Flood susceptibility index is equals to 14.2% slope plus 6.3% soil class plus 13% elevation plus 8.1% land use land cover plus 31% rainfall plus 27% proximity to river. Confusion matrix based measures such as sensitivity, specificity, accuracy, and kappa index were employed to test the models. In this case, the model is consistent in predicting the probability of occurrence of natural hazards. So, in this figure 8, integrated flood landslide in year 2050 and with RCP 4.5 scenario show that the areas with low susceptibility to landslide in both flooding and landslide, accounting for 60.26% of the total area and 39.74%, will fall in different combinations of moderate to very high susceptibility to landslide and flooding across 4 municipalities covering Mount Masaraga. And in this figure 5, in the year 2050 and RCP 8.5, the worst case scenario, around 52.56% of the area has low susceptibility to flood and landslide, while 47.44% of the total area is under moderate to very high susceptibility. And in this figure 6, for the year 2070, results of integrated hazard with RCP 4.5, almost half of the area, or 49.59%, will be exposed to moderate, high, and very high susceptibility, while 50.41% under low landslide and low flooding. In this figure 7, for the year 2070 and with RCP 8.5 scenario, 76.68% of the area will experience different combinations of moderate to very high susceptibility to flooding and landslide, while only 23.32% of the area will fall under low landslide and low flooding. In conclusion, existing land use and land cover in Mount Masaraga, where there is larger area devoted to agriculture than the proportion covered with forest, renders the watershed prone to landslide and flooding. Landslide and flood simulation modeling is critical in determining the relationship between input predictor and other components in the study area. And as a result of the AHP and GIS methods, it is recommended for assessing hazard potential. Working towards the mitigation of the impacts of geophysical and climate-induced hazards will lead to land cover and natural hazard management in Mount Masaraga. And for the recommendation, decision-making of the local and national government should incorporate the hazard susceptibility map and the multi-hazard maps for better analysis and action planning, and determining management regimes that environmentally sound, socially and economically acceptable and sustainable. And the communities of Mount Masaraga should be made fully aware of the dangers of the present settlement and how their current land use or their land use practices expose them to natural hazards. Albay's policymakers, planners, and managers must formulate more relevant policies for Mount Masaraga Watershed Forest Reserve, taking into consideration the potential hazards, both current and forecasted. And government managers should consider formulating an adaptation plan for development of built-up areas for residential, commercial, and industrial purposes. And lastly, generate a comprehensive floodplain and comprehensive land use management plan. That ends my presentation. Thank you. Special thanks also to the following. Thank you and have a nice day.